we need to talk about Brock Purdy. I mean, the thing about Brock was no matter what you could say about him in the regular season, his numbers were incredible. He led the league in like every statistic. So no matter what you said, he had the resume to back it up. MVP
Put on the tape,
credentials.
right? Put on the tape.
Not anymore. I mean, his numbers aren't bad by any stretch, but they are not what they were in the regular season. I mean, his quarterback rating is in the high 80s, which is not the Brock we know. So what's going on?
And I'll give full credit to Kurt Warner. And a light bulb went off when I watched this, and I went back to watch the film. Is that Kyle, and this is a positive, he trusts Brock to go through progressions. So much so that he's going through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 progressions sometimes. And the problem is the ball's now getting out in time because of a pass rush, because of adjustments, and it's a titch late. And what's happening is that the pocket's getting condensed, and he's either walking away from it or he's doing the check down too late, and McCaffrey's only getting 2 or 3 yards when he actually should have done that sooner. And what I mean by that is that what Kyle can do is half the field. And he did this with Jimmy. Basically, look at the coverage. If you have 3 linebackers and we have 3 receivers on this side, and you have 2 defenders and 3 receivers or 2 defenders, just go to the side where there's 1 less defender because you have the numbers. That's a lot easier to read, right? A lot easier to be like, dump it off to McCaffrey immediately because there's 3 defenders there. I've got these people running routes, or 2 defenders there. I've got 3 offensive players running routes. There's going to be a mismatch. What he's having him do, and it was very clearly brought up to a T by Kurt Warner, was that Brock looks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then he's got to reset and throw either to 5 or look back again to 1. But by the time that happens, people have recovered. You're going to have athletes. Baltimore did that they've got good recovery speed. Is that he's got to simplify this for Brock. And he relies on Brock's decision-making, and he's relying on Brock's processing, I think, a little too much. He's a second-year player. He's treating him like a 10-year veteran, and I think that's a mistake, Grant. Because it shows.
Yeah,
it's showing.
But, I mean, it's a two-way street, right? Like, it's not just Kyle. It's like, Brock, you're on the field. You have the autonomy to do what you want to do. It's your team. So, hold on. Let me tell you where I'm going with this. So Kyle wants him to execute. Of course, Kyle's very domineering. And Brock wants to please him. Brock wants to play the game the right way. But how did he win the game, the NFC Championship game? Scrambling.
The second one of the scrambles, he had him wide. He had Juwan Jennings wide open in the film. Like no one's around.
It's okay, though. What I'm saying is with Brock, instead of trying to go through 4 progressions in this pocket against Chris Jones and this pass rush, which is really good, even without Charles Omenihu, like it's okay to play 1 read, maybe 2 reads and scramble. Frankly, if the scramble lane is open, take it. There's nothing wrong with that because those are big plays for the offense and you're not going to turn it over.
Agreed.
They're really good plays. They were what did Kyle say this week? It was the difference between winning and losing. I agree.
It was the difference between winning and losing. It was. It's
one of the things I like most about it. Can I say something real quick? I hope this isn't. I'm going to say it. So last week on 3 different shows, I compared Brock Purdy to Jeff Garcia. Yesterday, Garcia texted me, said, "Hey, man, my sister was watching you on KTVU and said that you compared Brock to me. First of all, thank you. Second of all, can you send me the clip? I want to show it to my family." Is that wrong that I said that? I think it's kind of cool. It's like he was honored that he'd be compared to Brock Purdy. That's how much people think of Brock Purdy. I was like, all right, man, well, I guess I'm sold. If Jeff Garcia admires Brock, I mean, I gotta.
Unfortunately, for some reason, and maybe you and me in the minority, but people just forget about how good Jeff Garcia was. Could you imagine if Brock Purdy did what Jeff Garcia is doing now, 4 Pro Bowls, right? And just light up and throw for 4,000 yards and throw for the amount of touchdowns he did. He was
3 straight Pro Bowls, and like this first year in 2000, he rushed for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. He rushed 72 times.
What did they used to call him? Steve Young light, right? They were calling him the right hand Steve Young.
He averaged 5.8 yards per carry in 2000, and he ran the ball 5 times a game. Like that could be Brock Purdy. Why not? Mahomes plays like that.
Yes. Yep.
Mahomes plays like that. Steve Young played like that. Like, go ahead and scramble. Yeah.
That's interesting that he sent you that clip. That's interesting.
I thought it was so interesting. I hadn't heard from him in years. And he's like, hey, man, my sister said you compared Brock to me. First of all, thanks. Second of all, can I see that? I want to show my family. Like,
he lives out in the West Coast, right? He lives in.
Yeah, I know he's from Gilroy. I think he lives in San Diego. But
and he's never, and it seems like the Niners haven't gone out of their way to bring him on the coaching staff, never do anything with him.
I don't understand that at all.
There must be something that happened with the ownership or something.
I'm not going to even speculate on that. All I know is that Jeff Garcia is a legend. End of story.
Wouldn't you want him as a quarterback coach?
Yeah, they always have Joe Montana and Steve Young at games. Like, can you please bring Jeff Garcia back and give an homage to him? Because really, the best comparison for Brock is Jeff Garcia. It's not Russell Wilson or Drew Brees. It's Jeff Garcia, who was, I thought, in 2000, 2001, the best quarterbacks in the league were him, Favre, Warner,
and McNabb, and
McNabb,
those are
Peyton. Although Peyton really wasn't great yet, and Tom Brady sure wasn't.
Right. Remember, it was the inverse. All the good quarterbacks were in the NFC when we were growing up. And
the
AFC
he was a top 5 quarterback in the NFL.
Yep.
And he never played with a defense. And no offense to Steve Mariucci, but he was not exactly Kyle Shanahan.
No.
He was not. He did have Jerry Rice and Terrell Owens and Garrison Hurst and Charlie Garner. He had some players on offense, and he put up some numbers. Hell of a player. I think that's the best comparison for Brock Purdy. And like, you look at Brock and he looks like Jeff Garcia was in his 30s when he played. He was older. He figured Brock is not, even though he looks like a teenager, he's built. He's not like Sam Darnold, who's very skinny.
No, Brock got some meat to him. Yes,
he's got some meat on his bone.
Yes.
Yeah,
and he's faster than you think. He's got just enough to get by a linebacker. Right?
That play where he like shrugged off the pass rusher, rolled to his left, and hit Juszczyk.
That was my favorite play because I was like, I've never seen a 49er quarterback not 8 do that before.
I think Garcia could have maybe done that. Young could have done that. Montana could have done that. Jimmy would never have done that.
Those were sacks. The comeback would have never happened with Jimmy. That's the thing.
And frankly, Colin Kaepernick was not particularly elusive in the pocket.
No, he once he got 2 or 3 steps, he was lethal, but he needed those 2 or 3 steps.
And really, that skill set from Purdy, his mobility, obviously you'd like more, but that's more than enough. It's more than enough. You'd love him to be Josh Allen, right? Hey, man, just go truck the whole defense. But what he does is good enough doesn't even capture it. I think that's what people are starting to see with Brock. They're like, okay, like, yeah, his arm isn't the greatest, but look at the way he can move. Look at how he sees the field and how he keeps plays alive. Like, how many guys do it as well as him?
No matter what happens, the other thing that if you're optimistic, he's actually going to have a regular offseason this year to improve, right? He's going to say, and if I know Brock, and if you know him the way Asim appears, is that he's going to sit down and he's going to say, what was I really good at this year and what was I terrible at? And let me work on the things that I was terrible at. And on off season, maybe he's even better. Maybe his arm strength gets another year removed from surgery, maybe a titch better, but maybe he can do certain things that he knew that he did not do well this year and figure that out. He can now, right? He's going to have a full off season.
You started the show comparing this team to the 2019 Chiefs team. That team did come from behind. But on the way to the Super Bowl, Patrick Mahomes, I know he threw 8 touchdowns and no picks. So They fell into holes and he just went. I mean, he showed that he's Patrick Mahomes. Purdy hasn't exactly had that arc in the playoffs right now. I mean, he hasn't been bad, but he hasn't been lighting it up with a bunch of touchdowns and no picks.
He could have had easily 3 or 4 touchdowns, 1-yarders, and it would have changed the narrative, right? They just handed it off to McCaffrey and called it a deal, right? That to me, the touchdowns are great, but how he's getting there, right? But you're right. Mahomes didn't do it
against the Texans. Mahomes' quarterback rating was 134, and against the Titans, his rating was 120. So he wasn't struggling per se. Then he did have a tough time for 3 quarters against the Niners in the Super Bowl. But to me, that defense that the Niners had then is way better than the defense they have now.
I think that defense was more consistent. I think skill for skill, which is really boggling my mind, is that they're just as talented than they were back then. I just think it's a skill set. Their linebackers aren't as strong as they were. How's that? And watching the game, I will tell you that third linebacker, his name is escaping, not Warner, not Greenlaw, the one who started. They need to have Flowers or what's his name, Demetrius Fowles, start over that guy, because that guy was out leveraged on all those big runs. He was supposed to be there and he was not.